this is why we are here, to actually grow in love and kindness and compassion, to actually not allow that to be merely a belief system or something that's in a Bible or a spiritual textbook, but to actually live that. And so I was greatly influenced by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I met him as a small boy, like 9 years old, at Holman's Methodist Church when he was on a West Coast speaking tour raising money for SCLC. And then subsequently, I can remember hearing him speak about agape love, and he described it as the love of God operating in the human heart. And so when I was doing my seminar work, the name of the seminars was Agape Transformationals. Agape, unconditional love, and transformational, I was inspired by Malcolm X, who had gone to prison, had a great transformation, and came out a different being. So I combined it and called it Agape Transformationals. And then when I started Agape, I just took the name Agape because I do still believe that we're here to perfect our loving. And as you've indicated, it's sometimes translated as emptiness when you study the Buddhist text. Mm-hmm. But there is no emptiness anywhere. It's a fullness of life, it's a fullness of beauty, it's a fullness of intelligence, even though it can't be caught by the sensorium. The eyes may not be able to see it, the ears may not be able to hear it, but the eyes and the ears are prosthetics of a spiritual faculty that allows us to see with consciousness. So we begin to see the fullness of beauty and of life and of love everywhere. And that each of us are luminous beings. And some people have a ceiling on their love. Some people are ignorant of it. But it's still within us. So we're here to awaken to that and to allow it to be the activity of our awareness. So I took agape because I was inspired by Dr. King, and that's what we're seeking to do as a community. When we visioned agape back in 85, and then birthed it in 86, we embraced a vision. We wanted to be the next iteration of human consciousness. We wanted to be the next unfoldment of evolution of the human species. That was a very bold and big statement, but we embraced it. Deity somewhere. But prayer is what allows us to work on ourselves, to have a realization of that which is so, the suchness of life, the isness of life, the abundance, the joy, everything that's already here, even though it might be covered up by experience, might be covered up by time, it might be covered up by perception, it's here. So prayer allows us to actually realize that which we're praying for is already here. We just have to remove the obscurations from the mind to see it. And life visioning is the step beyond visualization. Visualization is like beginning steps of metaphysics. You visualize something you want, you feel that you have it, you have a certain kind of an emotional, psychological bond with it, you describe it, you articulate it, you hold that space, and then, it may begin to come into manifestation. But visioning is different. Visioning is saying that there's something already within us that might even be beyond our present paradigm of what we could visualize. And then what we're doing is putting ourselves in a position in a meditative protocol to ask certain questions, to allow that which is within us to begin to come forward, to begin to guide and direct us, to begin to come into our awareness. So we can ask a question such as, what is it that's trying to emerge in my life right now? What gift do I have to share? Using the word God, knowing that God is not a man in the sky, but a presence that's never an absence. What's God's idea of itself as my life? Visioning is inviting that which is intrinsic to come forth and begin to come into our awareness. We begin to ask, what is it that we need to become in order for this vision to manifest? We ask, what do we already have within our consciousness? What can we get rid of? It's a series of questions given in a meditative state so that we begin to cull from our own being why we came to this planet. So if you imagine an avocado seed doing a vision process, it would see an avocado tree. If an acorn would do the vision process, it would see an oak tree. When we do a vision process, we begin to catch something about us that wants to come forward. So we use meditation, affirmative prayer, life visioning, sacred service. We want to put ourselves in a position of sacred service, study, fellowship, doing inner work around forgiveness, in order to be great instruments to do the work that we're called to do on the planet, you see. Yeah.
So I get the sense the style of meditation you all work, and the affirmative prayer, I would imagine there's some stillness and quiet aspect, and as well as a more expressive, maybe the prayer more expressive. And I really like what it's, and I recognize the influences from Sri Aurobindo and other traditions,
Yes.
and Buddhism, with a more non-dual approach where, it's already there, right? It's what we're really allowing what's already there to arise.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, one of my teachers that greatly influenced me was Sri Aurobindo. I went to Oroville, I went to India. His work influenced me greatly. The Dr. Howard Washington Thurman influenced me. Walter Russell, one of the great mystics that emerged out of America, influenced me. These were great influences, particularly when I was waking up, because I didn't have a teacher, so I didn't know what was happening to me. So all my teachers were dead, and so they influenced me from the other side. So yeah, there's a great degree of stillness. As a matter of fact, every Sunday I do the Way of Meditation service. It's at 6:45 a.m. I give a 10-15 minute Dharma talk, and then we practice meditation, and it's still, and it's a very large service. People from all over the world tune into it, and then the next two services are more celebrative and worship with music and all of that. But the first service is a meditation service, and then we have a meditation service at 8:30 and a meditation service at 11 that precedes the services. Were pretty packed. Of our moods. We are aware, we become more aware that sense of peace that arises, that sense of love is actually independent of a condition. And we're able to hold that even when plans don't go our way. We're quicker to forgive. We're quicker to act from a sense of compassion. We're quicker to act from a sense of generosity. These are signposts along the way. It's not just, how much stuff you get in the world, how much you acquire in the world, because that may not be your particular lot to have a lot of stuff, But you notice that your joy is not dependent on an external circumstance. That's a very high state of consciousness, that you can have a sense of joy, and it's not based upon whether somebody likes you or whether a plan turned out the way you wanted it to turn out in the world of phenomena. These are great signs along the way. And the peace is not a pretense. It's not acting spiritual. It's not acting peaceful. There's a real sense of peace that happens. And even though it's not normal, particularly during this particular time of great intensity, there's less anxiety, there's less anxiousness, there's less fear, there's less worry. Even though you're in the same world that everyone else is in, your response to it is a little different. You're not sublimating your emotions, you're not bypassing, but you're in tune with something. And you just see life through a different perception, you see.
Yeah. Wow, beautiful. Yeah, I had certainly had many experiences of joy, happiness, even ecstasy in my life going along, but it was actually in prison when I began through practice to develop an abiding sense of joy and peace in prison, where there's really nothing obvious to be happy about, right? The conditions aren't something to be happy about it all, but to be able to, through practice and spiritual work, have that sense of abiding joy that wasn't related to the external circumstances. It really gives you a profound sense of confidence in something.
Right, and because you can do that, I mean, we're regular guys, you know what I mean? And because you can do that, and because I can do that, anybody can do that.
Absolutely.
With the level of practice. You're reminding me of someone that used to attend Agape. Did you ever meet, you know who Clarence Chance is?
What's the name?
Clarence Chance. He was saying that on his way to Agape.
And many don't, sadly. It can, can be terrible places, but many have. And, you know, there's something about that. You know, many of our somewhat audience here have probably been practicing meditation for decades. But I hope there's quite a number of audience that, you know, they may just be thinking about turning towards the spiritual dimension of their lives. Maybe they've been really busy with life and livelihood and parenting and what have you. And they're just really thinking about wanting to open up to that dimension of life, or start a spiritual practice, or enter a spiritual path, or try to find a teacher, these kind of things. And you know, I'm wondering what guidance you would have for somebody that's just kind of beginning to start. Now, I don't know whether this comes early on, but, you know, one of those awakenings is when you actually see that you're in a prison, even out in the free world, right? That's one of those early awakenings. But how could somebody get started? What kind of guidance would you offer?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I love what you just said, because that's the beginning, when you actually realize you're asleep. Mm-hmm. You know, I guess it was Heidegger that talked about the fact that a blind man that knows he's blind can easily more walk around the world, but if a blind man doesn't know he's blind, he gets into a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. So Jesus had a statement, you know, I not only have come to allow people who are blind to see and people who are deaf to hear, but I've come to make people who see blind and people who hear deaf. In other words, you know, I've come to eradicate, you know, the way you're looking at the world so that you can actually see. So, yeah, once we realize that we are in some kind of mental, psychological, emotional prison, sometimes it happens through pain, then we can begin. You know, we begin our process. And I would say that when we begin the process, we begin with an intention. Intention is like a rudder. It gives us some kind of direction. Of course, we all know that the byproducts of meditation in terms of heart coherence and brain coherence and blood pressure and you know, there's a lot of good benefits physically from meditation. But I think spiritually, when we have an intention, when we sit, we establish an intention to wake up. We set an intention to have a realization, an insight into our real nature. So we start with intention, and then we take our attention and we embrace our intention. And after a while, the intention becomes like an inner feeling tone. And every time you sit down, that intention is there, even if you don't verbalize it. And then from that, I often teach that you sit as if somebody's about to tell you something very important. So there's a whole availability, a whole listening that's beyond the ears, beyond the eyes. And then you sit, even if you are a veteran or if you're just beginning, you sit always as if this is your very first time. And so I think if you bring those particular elements, intention, attention, a soulful availability, and this is my first time, and you have some modicum of practice every single day, to the best of your ability. If you don't do it, you don't beat yourself up that you missed a day, you just start again. Something begins to happen. You begin to clear away the film. Your perceptual windows begin to be clear, and sometimes you'll have an insight into reality, an aha moment into that which is real. So there's a movement of a slow process of cleaning the filter, and then there's sometimes a dramatic satori moment of seeing like you've never seen before, but it just ebbs and flows like that. And the intention gets stronger. The practice becomes a part of your habit. So it's like brushing your teeth. It's like taking a shower. It's just your inner shower that you do on a daily basis. You know, you don't feel like doing it, you do it anyway, even if it's for a few moments. And then you notice as months and years go by, there's something about you that's different. There's something about you that's left behind, and there's something about you that's being polished. And as you asked earlier, you start to notice that you're a little different. Things that used to bother you, you may not prefer them, but they don't bother you as much, you see, because you're touching something within yourself that's eternal and real. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, Michael. So, yeah, you just gave us a profound and classic instruction in basic mindfulness and awareness meditation, intention, setting the clarity of intention, then bringing attention, and then the attitudinal qualities of that attention, right? And, you mentioned Suzuki Roshi's classic beginner's mind, right? You sit down with that beginner's mind, right?
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful. So I really invite people to come back to that again and again, because that was it right there. That's the core of meditation training right there. What about the community aspect? What about the fellowship? I know that's a big part of Agape. So what, in terms of our journey, finding, like-minded, people we can take that journey with, or just, some would argue that the real expression of any real spiritual evolution really shows up in the relational field. That's the only place you can really see it. How are we with others, right? How do we show up in the world? And so a lot of times the field of our practice, we got to do that internal individual work. But another important field of the practice can be the community, right? So I'm curious about that for you, because obviously I know it's been a big part of your journey.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even the Buddha talks about the Sangha, the community. And the community, I've said over the years that community ultimately grants you immunity from the lower frequencies of life. That when you're in a community of people who are practicing, there's a rich field of insight that occurs. And when anyone has an insight in that field, it has a tendency to draw everyone into that particular insight, even without language, without verbalizing it. If you're in the field itself, that particular local noosphere, mental atmosphere can affect everyone. And as you've indicated, it gives us a lot of practice, because in the relational field, that's where you practice your forgiveness, you practice your generosity, you practice your compassion, you practice your honesty, you practice, articulation, conversation. If you're sitting on a mountaintop by yourself, how do you know if in fact you've stabilized around a particular state of consciousness? You go visit your family, you come into spiritual community, you enter into some kind of relational dynamic, and then you're able to see, oh, did I really stabilize around a non-reactivity? Did I really stable around loving? Or was that just a fleeting moment? Did I really embody it? So the community gives us a place of embodying an insight, and it gives us a place of practice, and it gives us a place of loving intentionality. And also, people get to see when they come that they're not alone, that there are other people that used to be outliers, where people thought they were weird. You see a whole bunch of weirdos here. Playing together, praying together, healing together, doing sacred service together, and it's a level of comfort to know that, there are other people that and playing the same game of awakening as you are,